Ladies and gentlemen, when a man stands alone before the world and speaks a truth so fierce it shakes the foundation of empires, he does not speak for himself. He speaks for every broken nation. He speaks for every mother who has no bread but must sing lullabies to silence hunger. He speaks for every child born beneath a flag but buried beneath foreign bombs. He speaks for every voice silenced by debt, by dictatorship, by deception. 𝐒𝐏𝐻𝐑 𝐄𝐕𝐄𝐑𝐘 is not simply a name. He is a moment in history. A rupture in the silence, a refusal to bow. He did not come with a crown. He came with courage. He did not offer comfort. He brought clarity. In a world where puppets dance on strings held by invisible hands, he cut the cords. He said what others feared to whisper. He reminded the world that Africa is not a wounded animal to be pitied, but a sleeping lion that remembers its roar. This message is not politics, it is prophecy. It is not about Burkina Faso alone. It is about every nation broken by colonial hands and betrayed by native ones. It is about a system that thrives on silence, survives on division, and feeds on our forgetting. And that is why they will try to delete this message, because once truth is heard, chains become visible. Once courage is spoken, fear begins to retreat. Once dignity is claimed, the empire begins to fall. They told us they came to help us. They arrived with their flags of peace, their briefcases of aid, their smiles polished with diplomacy, and their words soaked in promises. They said they wanted to develop us. They said they wanted to build us. They said they wanted to uplift our broken nations, but behind their words was a silence louder than bombs, a silence that concealed a truth they never wanted us to discover. They never came to help us. They came to keep us where they found us divided, distracted, dependent, and silent. He saw it, he spoke it, and when 𝐒𝐏𝐻𝐑 𝐄𝐕𝐄𝐑𝐘 raised his voice, he did not speak in code or caution. He exposed the global scam that wears the mask of generosity and walks in the name of peace. They say it is aid, but it is chains. They call it support, but it is submission. Every loan comes with conditions. Every condition comes with a cost, and the cost is always sovereignty. We sign agreements in desperation. We welcome foreign soldiers in the name of protection. We build roads that lead to their mines. We build hospitals that depend on their medicine. We build systems that obey their data, their currency, their power. And while they sit in air-conditioned rooms debating the African problem, our people dig for gold with their bare hands and still sleep hungry. Is that what they call development? Is that the peace they promised? When a nation is truly free, it does not have to ask another for permission to breathe. But today, our economies are controlled from abroad. Our leaders consult foreign embassies before their own citizens. Our people die in wars they did not start. Our lands are leased to those who once conquered them, and the world calls this partnership. No, my brothers and sisters, this is not partnership. It is polite colonization. It is modern slavery written in spreadsheets and signed in suits. And those who question it are labeled radicals. But the real radicals are the ones who steal from the poor and call it investment. 𝐒𝐏𝐻𝐑 𝐄𝐕𝐄𝑑𝐘 shattered the illusion. He told the truth that every broken nation has whispered in its soul but feared to speak aloud, that the aid we receive is a lie, that the peace they preach is a trap, that their stability depends on our submission. And for this truth they turned their cameras off. They censored the message. They labeled it dangerous. But they cannot kill the truth, and they cannot delete the conscience of a people who are finally waking up. Let us be clear, no nation was ever built through begging. No generation was ever freed through dependence. Real peace is not delivered by drones. It is born in justice. It is built in dignity. It is protected by a people who know their worth. And worth is not measured in GDP reports prepared in Paris. It is measured in whether a farmer can feed his child, whether a woman can walk safely in her village, whether a graduate can find a future without fleeing across oceans. And if the systems in place cannot deliver that, then those systems must fall. And if those who defend those systems do not step aside, then history will sweep them away. Traoré was not speaking only for Burkina Faso. He was speaking for Congo, for Mali, for Haiti, for Sudan, for every land where foreign fingerprints still stain the decisions of sovereign people. He was speaking for every broken nation whose leaders traded integrity for immunity. For every village that watches its resources leave while its children die of thirst. He was speaking for the people, and that is what makes him dangerous. Because the moment a leader speaks for the people, not for donors, not for global markets, not for approval, but for the people, that leader becomes a threat to the empire, and so they will try to silence us. They will delete the clips, they will ban the pages, they will rewrite the headlines, but they cannot unhear the truth once it has been spoken. They cannot undo the awakening. They cannot delete the dignity that is now growing in every corner of the continent. We are no longer asking for a seat at their table. We are building our own, and in this table there will be no masters, only people. There will be no exploitation, only purpose. There will be no saviors. Only sovereign nations standing side by side, unashamed, unbought, and unbroken. He spoke, not because the cameras were watching, but because the world had forgotten how to listen. He spoke for the ones who had no microphone, for the faces buried beneath statistics, for the nations mentioned only when disaster struck. He did not speak for applause, he did not speak for fame, and he did not speak for favors. He spoke for the forgotten, the silenced, and the sacrificed. He spoke for the orphan who watches his mother's tears fall into an empty cooking pot. He spoke for the young man who walks for miles with a degree in one hand and no opportunity in the other. He spoke for the girl who dreams of freedom, but is forced to become a bride before she learns to speak her own name. When he stood to speak, he carried their voices like fire in his chest, and when he opened his mouth, the silence of centuries began to shatter. He understood something the world has chosen to ignore, that behind every broken nation are broken lives, behind every policy is a pulse, behind every contract is a corpse, behind every statistic is a story. They measure our countries in GDP, but they do not measure our pain. They calculate development by how many shopping malls we build, not by how many children we save from malnutrition. They celebrate stability while our youth drown in foreign seas, fleeing from a system that sees them as numbers, not as dreams. He refused to let the world look away. He refused to let the powerful pretend they did not know. He refused to let the broken remain invisible, and make no mistake, those who are broken are not weak. They are survivors of a global system that has exploited them, betrayed them, and then blamed them for their own suffering. He spoke for them because they have been told that their lives only matter when they serve someone else's profit. He spoke for the farmer whose land was poisoned by foreign companies in the name of investment. He spoke for the miner who goes into the earth to dig gold he will never touch. He spoke for the widow who lost her husband in a war started by men who never bleed, and in that moment he made it clear, you do not need a passport to feel pain, and you do not need power to speak truth. They feared his voice because it was not polished with diplomacy. It was raw, it was real, it was rooted in the earth of struggle, it was rooted in the cries of mothers who pray under candlelight because the power was sold to foreign interests. It was rooted in the blood of the youth shot in protests, labeled as threats for demanding bread. It was rooted in the silence of the villages that no one reports on because they hold no oil, no gold, no strategic value, only people, only dignity, only pain. And still he spoke, because when the world refuses to hear the broken, sometimes one voice must scream loud enough to shake the foundations of indifference. He did not call for pity, he called for justice. He did not beg for reform, he demanded restoration. He was not content with speeches in air-conditioned halls while bodies lie under the African sun. He stood in the gap between privilege and poverty and said what many only whisper behind closed doors, that the forgotten must be remembered, that the exploited must be defended, that the sacrificed must be honored, not with words but with action, not with charity but with change, not with handouts but with hands held high in defiance. The power of his voice was not in how loud he spoke, but in whose name he spoke. Because to speak for the broken is to risk everything. It is to challenge the system that profits from their silence. It is to confront the governments that claim to represent them but serve foreign banks. It is to demand that human beings be treated as more than tools of extraction, more than collateral damage, more than burdens on foreign aid reports. It is to say with conviction that every life matters, not in slogans, but in systems. He reminded us that history does not remember those who spoke when it was safe. It remembers those who spoke when it was dangerous. He reminded us that the world was not changed by the voices that echoed the powerful, but by those that stood for the powerless. And today, his voice echoes not because it was permitted, but because it was true. And that truth is now a flame carried by those who will never again accept silence as survival. They wear the garments of presidents, ministers, and statesmen, yet their hands are soaked not in the sweat of service, but in the ink of betrayal. They walk through parliaments with their heads held high, but their spines have long been bent under the weight of foreign instructions. They speak of democracy, yet silence opposition. They wave the flag, yet bow before embassies. They are not leaders, they are gatekeepers. They do not guard the interests of the people. They guard the gates that let the looters in. He did not fear to expose them. He called them out, not in whispers, but in thunder. He stripped the masks from their faces and showed the world the puppets sitting on thrones of betrayal. He knew the truth we've all sensed, that colonialism never ended, it simply changed its clothes. The chains were replaced with contracts, the whips were replaced with loans, the military bases were replaced with memorandums of understanding, and instead of white governors, we were given black faces trained to manage the plantation. That is the bitter truth. That is the uncomfortable reality. They trained our leaders in foreign universities, gave them medals and titles, fed them doctrines of dependency, then sent them back to rule, but not to liberate. And when they speak, they do not speak with the voice of their people. They speak with the tone of those who funded their campaigns and promised their protection. He had the courage to name it. To say that some of our biggest enemies have our own skin, speak our own languages, and fly our own flags, but their allegiance is elsewhere. Their loyalty is not to the soil that birthed them, but to the banks that own them. They smile at the people during elections, but negotiate away their future behind closed doors. They claim to stand for sovereignty, but every major decision is made with a phone call to a foreign capital. And every time the people rise, every time they demand dignity, these puppets are the first to crush them, not for the safety of the nation, but for the comfort of their masters. He was not speaking out of anger. He was speaking out of urgency, because when betrayal wears the mask of leadership, entire generations are lost. And betrayal is not only in the deals signed, it is in the silence when truth is needed most. It is in the lies fed to the youth, in the stolen budgets, in the soul, without resources. These leaders, these managers of misery, do not fear the collapse of their nations. They fear the rise of consciousness. Because when people awaken, when they begin to ask questions, when they begin to challenge power, the puppets are exposed, and the system they protect begins to tremble. He made it plain. If a leader cannot say no to foreign domination, if he cannot protect his nation's wealth, if he cannot speak the truth without trembling, he is not a leader. He is an agent, and no agent will liberate you. No agent will build your future. No agent will ever dismantle the system he benefits from. That is why he called for the people to rise, not in chaos but in clarity, to see through the illusions, to understand that our crisis is not one of poverty, it is one of betrayal. Because how can a land so rich produce people so poor unless someone is stealing and someone is helping them steal? We were told that freedom came with independence, but independence without economic power, without resource control, without mental liberation, is a lie dressed as progress. They said we are free, but our resources still leave in ships we do not own. They said we are free, but our currencies are printed in foreign lands. They said we are free, but our policies are shaped by international institutions that were never elected by our people. He did not accept that lie. He challenged it, and in doing so, he gave us the courage to look our betrayers in the eye and say enough. This is not a call for violence. It is a call for vision, a call to demand that those who lead us serve us, not sell us. That they stand for us, not kneel for others. That they be held accountable, not worshipped like kings. Because if we do not challenge them, if we do not demand better, the next 50 years will look like the last 50, and our children will curse us for our silence. He did not speak to impress the powerful. He spoke to awaken the powerless. He did not raise his voice so history would remember his name. He raised it so the next generation would remember their own strength. He understood something that every great liberator has known, that real change does not come when old men finally see the truth. It comes when young people finally refuse to live the lie. He spoke so the next generation could stand, not with borrowed language, not with broken hope, but with unshakable purpose. His message was not simply a cry, it was a calling. A calling to every young man and woman who has ever felt invisible, voiceless, or betrayed by the system they were told to trust. He looked at the youth not as a problem to be managed, but as a power to be unleashed. While the world sees young people as threats or tools, he saw them as the architects of a future not yet written. But to build, they must first believe that they are not powerless, believe that their voice matters, believe that their dreams are not too big for this world. The systems built to silence them are designed to convince them that their rebellion is madness, that their courage is foolishness, that their hope is naive. But he told them the opposite. He told them that to believe in your own people is not a weakness. It is the beginning of true strength. He told them that the most revolutionary act in a broken nation is to dream without permission and act without fear. And why did he do it? Because he knew the chains are no longer just on the hands, they are on the minds. They are forged in classrooms where children learn to admire everything foreign and despise everything local. They are tied in newsrooms that glorify outside powers while ignoring the brilliance rising from within. They are tightened every time a young person is told to keep their head down, to wait their turn, to stay in line. He came to cut those chains, he came to break the spell, because when the young realize their strength, when they stop waiting for saviors, the entire system begins to tremble. He told them, do not wait for permission to rise. Do not wait for leaders to lead. Do not wait for the world to recognize your worth. Create it, claim it, become it. He understood that the greatest resource Africa has is not beneath the ground. It is walking on top of it. It is the youth, with minds sharper than diamonds, with spirits stronger than gold, and yet so many have been turned into shadows of their potential, told to be quiet, told to be obedient, told that leadership is only for the chosen few. But he broke that lie. He said the revolution does not need an invitation. It needs participation. He said that being young is not a disadvantage. It is your weapon.